The Diaoyu were taken by Japan in 1895, after waging an aggressive war against China. A few decades later, Japan would attack again with greater force. Senkaku Islands shares close proximity with China, Taiwan, and Japan, thereby creating territorial disputes. The tension re-escalated when Japan decided to buy the land from its Japanese owners.
Of 5 islands and rocky outcrops lies more than 1,200 miles from Tokyo, but only 124 miles from Taiwan. According to a treaty made with the United States after Japan's defeat in World War II, the islands reverted back to Japanese control in 1972. In August, a group of protesters from China and Taiwan landed on one of the islands and were arrested by Japanese authorities. The next week, Japanese protesters did the same thing, sparking a wave of violent anti-Japanese protest throughout China.
But what exactly are we fighting for? As a mouthpiece, the cause is to protect national prestige and sovereignty. But the underlying reason, though, is a vast reserve of gas reserves in the Senkaku Islands. The Geek Cafe survey had found potentially huge reserves of oil and natural gas under the continental shelf in the East China Sea that incorporates Senkaku Island. Chinese estimate puts the oil stores in the South China waters at 213 million barrels, an amount that would exceed the proved reserves of every country except Venezuela, that has 296.5 billion barrels at the end of 2011, and Saudi Arabia, that has 265.4 billion barrels. The boundary of the territorial claim overlaps, and the proximate area of gas fields overlaps with the territorial claims. That's about 10 times higher than a US Geological Survey estimate from the mid-1990s, but even that lower figure puts the South China Sea's oil potential at 4 or 5 times that of the Gulf of Mexico. In Asia, and especially in China, demand for power and fuel is fast outstripping supply. Meanwhile, advances in deep-water drilling technology have put offshore oil and gas resources within reach for the first time. The result of all this, says Stephen Clay, Northeast Asia Director of the International Crisis Group, which studies conflict hotspots, is a race to assert control over energy resources in disputed territories before they are developed by a rival.
Secretary Osamu Fujimura confirmed negotiations at press conference, saying, "We are exchanging views with the landowners in various ways, but that process is ongoing." On Wednesday, Japanese media reported that the landowners and the government have agreed on a price of $26 million. The Chinese regime does not recognize the Japanese family's ownership of the islands and claims that the islands are a part of its territory. In response to media reports, China's foreign ministry says it will take action to protect its territory.
China's will and determination to protest its territorial sovereignty is unswerving. China is following developments closely and will take necessary measures to protect its national territorial sovereignty.
Why is Southeast Asia tensed? Reason 1. Demand and supply. Demand, especially in China, is outstripping supply. Advances in drilling technology have put offshore oil and gas resources within reach for the first time. The greed of making money out of supplying and satisfying the self-worth by buying the created demand has resulted in this situation. Reason 2. The consumer culture. The cultural consumers tending to keep consuming has put strains on the producers to keep producing. Similarly, money-making motive has resulted in producers to keep producing by any means to the level that they manufacture demand in order to capitalize on its almighty engine of consumption. Reason 3. Power, authority, and influence. States are trying to enforce power by exhibition of authority and influence in a transboundary context. By doing this, the states are trying to establish itself as a geopolitical hegemon. We can clearly see that a state of friction in international politics has occurred over the ecosystem with resources, in this case Senkaku Islands, because of the ever-growing mighty engine of consumption that has arisen out of the market economy system of consumption and production. In this case, states are trying to enforce power by exhibition of authority and influence in a transboundary context. The three reasons mentioned above all points to none other than the significant problem of capitalism.
Over a small group of uninhabited islands could have big economic implications. On Thursday, CCTV, China's state broadcast service with an audience of more than 1 billion viewers, said 3 of its channels will drop commercials by Japanese companies for 3 days, starting this Sunday. The announcement came just 1 day after this warning from Chinese officials.
With Japan's so-called purchase of the islands, it will be hard to avoid negative consequences for Sino-Japanese economic and trade ties.
Those consequences could be large. China is Japan's biggest trading partner. Japan sends 20% of its exports here, and Japanese brands are everywhere.
I think the impact could be incredibly big. It could be a huge blow to economic relations between the two countries.
Tourism could be hit especially hard.
In the past 2 days, we received 20 cancellations. We're also seeing a sharp drop in the number of inquiries about Japan travel tours for the upcoming October 1st holiday.
At least one major travel company, Shanghai Spring International Travel Service, says its Japan bookings have dropped 40%.
So where are we headed? Another war? Haven't we been through enough horrors already that we go for war for the mere fooling of the supply and demand chain? Now the question is, can international justice be served without resorting to violence? Is it really worth it?